Hey guys, in today's video we'll be actually creating the parallax animation that I created in Figma, and this is what the design looks like. I'm just going to go ahead and refresh it. So you're just going to refresh it again. As you can see, we have this thing coming in, then if we scroll down, we have the discover our experiences, and then we have these things coming in. So we're going to be creating this animation. One thing that we will not be doing in this video is triggering these animations if a person clicks on the scroll down, because I just wanted to purely have this video on HTML CSS. So obviously these animations are just going to be timed to, let's say, a few seconds. So in order to do so, we're just going to go ahead and animate these after a delay. But the next video is going to be coming where we're just going to go ahead and actually link these with Alpine or JavaScript and have these animations only come in when you intersect the bottom section, and only when you click the scroll down. So that's going to be pretty much it. Let's just get started. So in order to create the screen that I just showed you, we need a few things. So I have a project set up in front of me which has Tailwind included, and I'm basically running as CSS, and then I have an empty body tag and then some SCSS files here. So the first thing that we need to obviously is we need to go ahead and actually grab our image. So I'm just going to go here. Here I have my image. I'm not going to worry about, again, the image being an appropriate size or anything, because again, I'm trying to do this quickly and not take too much of your time. So I just pasted this image that I have in my original design. As you can see, it's not really, again, huge, but it's going to work for now. So for starters, we're just going to go ahead and actually launch the live server. So here we have the live server. The live server in VS Code basically just allows to refresh automatically some of the changes that we're making. For example, I don't have to refresh the browser in order to see the changes. So that's what it's for. Now, one thing I'll do is I'll add an intro section, intro minus section. This is going to be the section that we have here. I'm going to say this intro section is going to have a class, intro minus section. It's going to have some style. So I'm going to say it's going to have a height of, it's basically going to have the screen height. Then it's going to have the background that we just added, background image URL, /img/ this background. After that, what we need here is we need to go ahead and define a few things. For example, background position, we can define it can be top center. Apart from that, let's just go ahead and actually say that by default, the background size is going to be 140% and auto. 140 basically means, again, the width is going to be 140% and it's going to be auto. Then we have to obviously, well, first of all, let's just go and see what happens. I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to add a background to the body tag, which is going to be this one. Let's just select the background. I think here we have the background, which is this. Let's just go ahead and say that the background for this particular page is going to be this. Let's just go ahead and give it that and refresh. Okay, so here we have the intro section. Now in the intro section, what we want to do is by default, we want to go ahead and also add this. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to export this. I'm going to say export as a PNG, because we obviously want the transparency. This is going to be the foreground. And let's just go ahead and place the foreground here. Ideally, you want to work with SVG files. So if this was an SVG, it would be much better. But if you don't have it, that's fine as well. And I'm going to say then we have the mountain inside of it. And the mountain is going to have a background image of /img/foreground. We can also just call it foreground just to be consistent, or we can call the image mountain. I think I'll just call the image mountain. So now that we have our image, well, maybe we don't even need to do this. We need to just go ahead and actually just apply the image as an image tag. Let's just go ahead and do that. So image is going to be img/mountain. So here we have our image. As you can see, here it is. Now, one thing we want to do is we want to say that this intro section is going to have a flex layout, and the items are going to be at the bottom. So I'm going to say that the items are going to be at the end. So that's basically going to position the mountain that we have here at the bottom. So now that we have this, one thing that we have to do is, by default, this is going to be how the image is going to render, whatever it is. But then what we want to do is, after, let's say, 3 seconds, we need to go ahead and actually decrease the size of this image to maybe 50%. And we also need to decrease the background to be 100% in size. So in order to do so, what I'll just go ahead and I'll say that it's going to animate using the animation selector. We're going to say this is going to be the background size, and let's just go ahead and give it some properties, like maybe it's going to run for 1 second, and it's going to ease in, and it's going to be forward, and it's going to come after 3 seconds. And now let's just create the background animation keyframes. Let's just give this background size and say that the 0% is going to start from a background size. Let's just copy the above one. It's going to start from a background size of 140, and it's going to go till 100, which is going to be 100%. So now if we just try to save it and see what happens, so after 3 seconds, ideally it should actually animate this, but obviously we haven't given some let's just see first of all if it's actually being applied here. So as you can see, it's not being applied. I probably made a mistake here. So let's just figure out what the mistake here is. So we have the animation, and then we have defined this particular thing. Then we have the 1 second and then ease in, and let's just go ahead. It's not forward, it's forwards, because it's, so that was a typo here. And let's just go ahead and see. And as you can see, after 3 seconds, it basically comes in. And we can also say that it should come in fast, maybe 0.5 seconds or something. So if we do 0.5 seconds, as you can see, it's coming in fast. We can also say ease out or whatever. We can try a bunch of these animations. So what we have to do now is we need to go ahead and create a similar animation for our mountain. I'm going to say this is going to be a mountain size animation. In this one, what we basically want to do is we want to go ahead and copy the same thing that we did here. We're going to say that this is going to be again trigger after 3 seconds. It's going to be mountain size, whatever it is. And then let's just go ahead and, instead of obviously doing this, let's just say transform and then say scale. By default, the scale is going to be 1. But after, let's say that those particular seconds, it's going to be, let's say 0.75. I don't know how that's going to look, but I'm just doing it quickly. We also need to go ahead and apply our class here. I'm going to say mountain. So now let's just refresh it and see how this looks. So as you can see, it is scaling properly. One thing, obviously, it's happening, like it's actually scaling from the middle. So let's just go ahead and say that the scaling or the transform origin should be bottom. So now that the transform's origin is bottom, it shouldn't scale from the middle, and it should stick to the bottom. So as you can see, that works. If we want, we can also go ahead and make it even smaller. Maybe we can make it 0.65 instead of 7.5 if we want. So again, you can obviously tweak these things the way that you want them. So as you can see, now it's 971. In our design, it's 983, so it's pretty close. If you want to be very precise, then you can do that too, but I'm just going to leave it at that. One other thing that I can now do is I can add the content, or start adding the content. One thing, in order for me to go ahead and add the content, I'm just going to go ahead and say that we have an H1, which is going to say explore the night sky. Let's just place that here, and we have some text here, which is some lorem ipsum. Let's just go ahead and add that here. Now, the text size for this lorem ipsum is class text minus XL. So XL is 20 pixels, and similarly, it's 48 here. So let's just go ahead and say text minus, I think 4XL. Oh, sorry, 5XL is 48, and let's just give it a font minus semi-bold, I think. No, it's bold. So font minus bold. So now we should have these two things here. As you can see, we have them. The only problem that I have here is these aren't up and, like, again, vertically stacked. So now they should be vertically stacked, and I'm going to say text minus center. So again, that should center it. So this looks good. Obviously, one thing is the image itself is causing issues. So I'm just going to say that the image here, so I'm just going to go, never mind. I can go ahead and apply the classes here as well if I want. This should actually be absolute. If we want, it should be positioned absolute. Or what we can do is, obviously we can position it absolute. So let's just go ahead and actually create a div here. I'm going to say this div in itself is going to be absolute, left -0, flex, justify -center, and then obviously bottom -0 as well. Now that we've done that, let's just apply a relative tag here. So this should again make this particular box stick to the bottom. As you can see, now it's sticking to the bottom. Now we need to again center align the content here. So I'm going to go to my intro section. I'm going to say this is going to be items -center, and then justify -center and text -white, just to make the text white as well. So now that we have that, it should automatically refresh. And as you can see here, we have the text, which I think looks okay. Obviously the text isn't exactly what I want. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to copy the font family here. I'm going to say the font family should be this. Let's just go ahead and apply that to our intro section here. And this should again just directly copy the font that I have locally. But if you want to use fonts like this, ideally you should go ahead and apply it as a font face declaration, or probably use a Google font or any web font if you want. So as you can see, this works. Now, if we actually trigger our Figma animation and have a look at it, how that works, the way it works is if it loads, I'm going to refresh. So we have this thing, and then the text is coming from the bottom and it's going up. So that should happen. And then the navigation is also coming from the up and it's coming down. So let's just go ahead and do that and apply this transition here if we want. I'm going to say, well, actually, we can also say this is going to be the intro section minus text, intro section text or something. Now that I have this, I'm going to say I want to apply something on the intro section text. So the intro section text should actually be opacity 0 by default. It should also, well, actually, we can just apply it like this, text -center, opacity -0, and let's just see how this looks. Obviously, it's going to disappear once the opacity is 0, so that's fine. No worries on that. We are going to go ahead and just say intro text here. So intro text, and we're going to apply the same animation as we did previously. Obviously, it's going to trigger after 3 seconds, and this is going to be intro text 0.5, whatever it is, and we're going to say by default it's going to be opacity 0, and then it's going to again be opacity 1 here. If we just do that, let's just see how that looks. So here we have our animation, everything zooms in or whatever, zooms out, and then we have this text coming in, which probably is okay. Now, one thing we need to do, obviously, is we want to also move the text up. So by default, I'm going to say that transform, then translate Y. So it's Y position. If we just go ahead and let's actually just manually do it ourselves. So transform, translate Y should, let's say, be 100 pixels. So it should maybe 200 pixels. It should start somewhere here, or we can also say just 100% or 200%, or maybe even 300%. It should start here, yes. It should start at 300%, but then it should go to -300%. So let's just see how that looks. I'm going to refresh the page. So let's just see how that looked. I'm going to go here. Sorry. I also need to just go ahead and change our mountain to pointer minus events, pointer minus none, or sorry, not here. Apologies. I'm going to say at apply and then pointer events none, so that when we're inspecting this, we don't basically select this image. I want to disable the pointer events on this image. So now here we have our text coming in, and obviously it's going way up to the top. So I'm going to say it shouldn't actually scale 200%, maybe -100%. I don't want it to go that much up. So now if we have a look at it, yeah, this I think looks good. I'm going to do the same with our header here. So let's just go ahead and first create the header. So the header, as we can see, the width for the header is 1366 or whatever it is. Let's just go ahead and create our header here. I'm going to create a div, sorry, not a div. I'm going to create a header, and I'm going to basically, first of all, give our night sky logo. So this is going to be a hashtag and then logo, and then we have a UL with some li elements, and the li elements are home. So anchor, home, and then we have a bunch of them, experiences, whatever. I think we have 5 links. So experiences, then we have about us, pricing, and then book a session. So about us, pricing, and then let's just say book a session. Let's just see what the height of the book a session is. The height of the book a session is about 54 pixels. So let's just go ahead and give it that. So 54 divided by 8, as you can see, is 6.75. So we can't really give this height properly in Tailwind. We would have to manually apply it. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to say the height is going to be, let's say, 12 by default. So if we just use h-12, that's 48. If we use h-14, that's 56. Maybe you can use 56 for now. Let's say this is going to be rounded full. It's going to have a border minus current. Border minus current basically means it's going to choose the color of the text. Let's just say this is going to be text minus white. And yeah, I think we have that. And then the spacing in between all of these elements. Let's also see the padding here. So the padding is 26. So I can make it 24. Px minus 6 is 24. And I think that should pretty much be it. Let's just give it some spacing here. Space minus y minus 8, and then flex. So let's just see how this looks. So here's how it looks. Obviously, we want this whole header to be fixed at the top. Top minus 0, left minus 0. Now it should be fixed at the top. It shouldn't actually be. So it's here, but I don't see it. Z minus 10. Let's just go ahead and give it a Z index and basically say flex and then items minus center just to vertically center them. And the same goes here, items minus center just to vertically center them. So here we have it, the space minus y. This shouldn't be space minus y. This should actually be space minus x, because we're going to give an x spacing in between them. Then we have to say justify minus between. This basically is going to position the logo on the left and all of the content on the right once we do a width full. So as you can see, that works. Now we want to go ahead, and I can actually just go ahead, if I want, I can say remove all of this, and I can just go to my styles just so the HTML isn't crowded. I'm going to say all of these things here. I'm going to add a max width of whatever the header container was, which is 13 this, and or maybe you can just give it a width like this and then a max width of 100%. Now that that's done, let's just go ahead and apply the same font. Well, actually we need to apply the same font on the body directly. So I'm going to say the body font should be this, and yeah, that should be fine. So here we have the max width. Well, actually the max width shouldn't be this. What we can do instead is we can say that there's a container inside of it. So a container, and the container actually has a width and a max width of something like this. I think this is a much better way of doing this. So we can start reusing the container elsewhere if we want, and then max margin 0 auto. That basically centers the container. So now I'm going to go ahead here. I'm going to say all of these things, this whole UL and this anchor tag is actually within a div.container, and the container is taking its styles from here. Similarly, I'm going to say that the container is going to have some properties like apply flex, items minus center, and then justify minus between. Especially in the case of the header. Well, we don't need to actually give these. We can just say, we can just define these at the top level, because some containers may have this, some containers may not have these properties. So I'm just going to define it specifically on the container that we need it on. Now that we have that, let's just go ahead and see what the font weight here is, 700, and the size is 28. So let's just go and give this logo some class. So text minus 2XL is 3XL is probably close to 28. I'm not being very specific. If I want, obviously I can give it directly in the HTML, or I can give it like this, but I'm not going to do that right now. And the font weight is going to be bold. So once we have that, as you can see, we have all of that. And then, so we have a border current. I'm going to say the border is going to be 1 pixel by just saying border. And the height is going to be 14, but obviously that's not being applied because I haven't given it a flex. Let's just give this a flex and then say items minus center. That's going to center it. So here we have our button as well. I'm going to see if I have, so these buttons, or sorry, these links are actually semi-bold as well. So I'm going to say font minus semi-bold, so that everything here is actually semi-bold in terms of the text. So now that we have that done, let's just see what the positioning of this element is from the top. It's 56. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say this whole header should actually be empty. 56 divided by 4 is 14. So this should be positioned 56 pixels from the top. So now that we have that, we're going to again apply the same animation stuff that we did previously. I'm going to say this is going to be our header animation. And in this header animation, we're going to say by default, the translate y should be minus 300, and then it can just be 0. And let's just see how that looks. Obviously, that's not going to work because I haven't applied this animation to the header. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply that and say this is going to be our header animation. And as you can see, that probably looks okay. Obviously, we want to go ahead and apply the same transform and opacity on the root element. So I'm just going to apply that. So here we have it. I think it should actually be much slower. Let's just see what we're doing here. It is 1000. So the animation speed is actually 1000. So let's just change that to 1 second again. And the delay is much less. So I'm just going to go ahead and change the delay to 1 second. So now let's see how it works. So after 1 second, we have something like this. Refresh again. 1 second, and we have something like this. And again, we can obviously go ahead and fine tweak it. We can say that this header is going to come after 2 seconds, and this intro animation is going to come after 1 second. So if we want, we can do that as well. Obviously, that's going to be slightly different from Figma, but this may actually look fine as well. So we can do that too. We can also say this can actually be a bunch of different styles. We can say this can be ease in, ease out. You can go ahead and you can tweak those things later as well. I think ease in, ease out makes much more, it actually looks much better to me. So I'm just going to replace all of my animations with ease in, ease out, or ease in and out. So obviously this got messed up. So I'm just going to go ahead and correct it. So yeah, I think this should pretty much be okay for this particular animation. So now that we have this, we're going to go ahead and actually do the other animation, which is if a person basically clicks on the scroll down button, it should actually show all of these three things, all of these things. So if I click on the scroll down button, I obviously haven't created the scroll down button. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that quickly. Let's just give that directly here. Whether we need to give that here or we need to give that elsewhere, well, maybe we can just give it here. So I'm going to say, actually, let's just call this a button for simplicity's sake. Let's just go ahead and export this SVG, and then export. Arrow down SVG. Here we have the SVG, and I'm going to go ahead and place it. And let's just go ahead and call it and see if it renders. Maybe it may not render because again, it's actually coming from Font Awesome. So we probably have to look at that. Let me just go and see where the SVG is. Well, it actually is rendering, so it's fine. Oh, probably because I already have the font locally installed. So now I'm just going to say scroll down. This is 16 pixel. font minus semi-bold, text minus LG. No, sorry, base, text minus base is already 16, so we don't need to give that. And then say flex, flex minus call, justify minus center, items minus center, bottom minus 0. Well, probably not bottom minus 0. We can just go ahead and give another div here. So here's going to be another div. I'm going to basically give this the same styling as this. And I'm going to say Z minus 10 just because I want this to be situated above here. And say, if you have a look at this, obviously I need to give it a width. So I'm just going to give it a width full. So we have it situated here. And then let's see what else do we want to give it. So probably we need it positioned from the bottom at 8 pb minus 8. And then there obviously should also be some spacing in between here. So space minus y minus 2 in between these two elements. The reason why the space is not applied because this also needs to be in an HTML tag. So I'm going to give that. And now as you can see, we have the correct spacing applied. So now if we click on this, we should actually go here. And then obviously these things should start animating as well and all of that fancy stuff. Now, before we actually move on to that, I want to go ahead and export this star image. So I'm going to say export. And let's just go ahead and actually export this. It's called stars. I'm going to go here, include the stars here. And then just go ahead and apply the stars to the actual background. So I'm going to say it's going to be a background image, and then we're going to have the URL, and then we have the /img/stars. So there we have it. This shouldn't actually affect the content that much because this image is coming at the top. So I'm going to now go ahead and actually create another div. This is going to be the div at the bottom. So I'm going to call it the bottom section. Again, I don't necessarily recommend all of these classes. I'm just doing this to show you how something like this is done. Now in this bottom section, I'm actually going to apply the classes directly here just to speed up the process. So here we have the bottom section, and just this should actually allow you to start scrolling to the bottom. So here we have the bottom section, and now we need to go ahead and basically add the other two things in. So I'm just going to go ahead and I am going to grab this intro section text. I'm going to grab it here, and I'm going to say that this text obviously is slightly different. So it's going to be discover our experiences, and then we have this thing here. So now if you have a look at it, so as you can see, this is actually coming exactly like the above animation. I'm going to say this is going to be text minus center. Sorry, this actually is text minus center. So I'm going to say this is going to be text minus, well, actually this whole thing is going to be text minus white, right? Yes, text minus white. This whole bottom section is going to have text that's white. So yep, that looks good. One other thing that we have to do, so this is not the intro section, this is the bottom section text. So I'm just going to go here. I'm going to copy all that we have in this particular section. I'm going to say bottom section minus text, and everything should be same, but this should be bottom text. And in this bottom text, we're going to duplicate this and say bottom text, but now it shouldn't again go minus 100. It should actually just go at 0, and this should probably start from 300. Maybe this is fine, and let's just see how that looks. So this comes here. I think this looks fine. Obviously we need to give some spacing from the top for it to basically look much better. So let's just go to our index here. I'm going to say this is going to be pt minus how much padding do we have at the top here? The top padding is 222. So 222 divided by 4 is 55. So I'm just going to say 56. So as you can see, we have that. So this looks fine. And now we basically just want to have some of the other things animated, like these ones. So in order for me to create these cards, I first of all have to grab the images. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to select all of these images, export four layers, and then basically add them to the downloads. So here I have the images. The height and the width of this image is 271 and 307. So let's just, well, we don't even need to give it because that's the default height that's going to come. So I'm going to say div and then boxes, class boxes, and then we have each individual box, div.box, or location minus box. Let's just give this location minus box, and then we have the image. I'm going to say image slash box minus 1. And let's just give this box minus 1. Then we have some text here, which is 20 pixels. So let's just go ahead and say midnight sky. And this is going to be surrounded in div class text minus XL, and then font minus semi bold. And then here we have a paragraph which basically has some text, and it is opacity 60%. So I'm going to say opacity minus 60. So here we have our boxes. So box 1, box 2, box 3, box 4. Let's say this is our box 2, and then this is box 3, and this is box 4. Let's just go ahead and change the text here just so it's different. Milky Way Galaxy, and then the same thing here. So now that we have this, let's just see how this looks. Obviously it's going to appear automatically, and the spacing in between all of these, the spacing in between this should be 12, and the spacing in between the image and that stuff should be, so let me just go ahead and actually give some spacing here. So the spacing at the top should be 20, and the spacing at the bottom should be 12. So this should do it. And maybe the 12 pixel spacing doesn't look that good, so I'm just going to make it 8. So now that we have that, let's just go ahead and say flex and then items minus center. And the space in between these should be space minus justify minus between. Let's just give it that. And now let's just again obviously use our container that we created for this particular purpose. Let's just surround this in a div.container. So now here we have our text. I think this all looks good. One thing obviously we need to do is we need to give some margin in between these two things. So the margin in between these two is 100. So 100 divided by 4 is 25. So empty minus 24, since that's a class that's available. And so some of the text obviously is expanding. So we're going to say that the max width of this box or location box, now we can go ahead and add that here, location box max minus width to 71 pixels. So now the text should automatically wrap after the CSS is applied. This looks good. And now we just need to animate our boxes, and this whole thing should ideally be done. Now, in order to animate the boxes, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and we need to add a bunch of animations here. So we're going to say that this location box is going to, so location box 1, this is basically going to go from minus 300 to whatever. This is fine. And I think this is exactly what we need. So we just need one animation, location box. And now we're going to say animate. And we can copy the whole thing that we had before, which is this one. And we're going to go ahead and give it this. And we are going to go ahead and say 3 seconds or whatever. Sorry, not 3 seconds, 5 seconds. And then let's say location minus box here. So if we just do that and don't do anything else, let's just see what happens. Obviously, nothing happens right now. And something happens, but it happens in a really weird way if we just refresh it. So after 5 seconds, what's going to happen is, obviously, we're using our header animation for some reason. So we obviously should not use our header animation. We should use the bottom text animation. So I'm just going to copy this bottom text animation, place it here. And let's just see how that looks. So here we have these things coming in. So now if we take it from the top, before taking it from the top, let's just see if there's anything we can improve. So obviously these things are appearing by default. We need to go ahead and hide them. So I'm just going to apply these same things here. So now if we have a look at the page, this thing comes in, the header comes in, we scroll down, and then we have these things coming in. Obviously these are coming in from way too far, so I don't want them to come from that down. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, okay, then we have this, and then we have something like this. So this looks good. Obviously the bottom text animation should happen a bit afterwards. So I'm going to say this should happen after 4 seconds. So now if we have a look at it, we have this whole thing coming in. Then we scroll down, we have this coming in, and then we have these 4 coming in. Now, in order to actually add a bunch of functionality, like for example, if I click on the scroll down, this should actually scroll down, and then and only then should this animation appear. We have to add some JavaScript or Alpine or anything along those lines, and this video is already getting a bit too long. So I'm not going to do that in the next in this video, but we're going to cover that in the next video. One other thing we can do is if you want to go ahead and apply this to different location boxes separately, and you want to have one box come in at one at a time, then what we can do quite simply is we already have the location box animation, that's here. We're going to go ahead and remove that, or we're going to go ahead and remove this whole thing basically. Now I'm going to say, well, actually never mind, I'm just going to remove this, and I'm going to say now that and is to nth minus child, so the 0th child should have this animation. And then I'm going to basically duplicate this. The first child should have this one, the second one should have this one, the third should have this one, and we can just go ahead and separate these out by 0.5 seconds, so 6 and then 6.5. So now if we just go ahead and play it, so we have this whole thing above, we have this coming in, then we scroll down, we have this coming in, and then we have each individual card coming in. For some reason, the last card is not coming in, so let's see if we made some mistake here. So as you can see, this is the third one. Sorry, not the 0 one. I'm thinking about arrays here. So 3 and then 4. So this should work now. So we have this at the top, we scroll down, and then we have this, and then 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So basically we have this stuff, and I think this looks good. In order to add the advanced functionality that I did talk about, we're going to cover that in the next video following right this one, not a week later, probably tomorrow or the day after. And that's pretty much it for this video. Again, I know it was a long one, but hopefully you learned along the way. If there's anything specific you'd like to know, any questions that you have, definitely let me know. But I'll see you later. Take care. Bye.